Alright, what's up everybody? So just wanted to make a video for the newest Warframe, Voruna. So she recently came out with Lua's Prey a couple weeks ago. Or I guess not a couple weeks, about a week ago. So I've been playing her a lot, testing a lot of her interactions and stuff. Honestly, probably the most fun I've had with a new Warframe for a few years now. I think the last Warframe that came out I really enjoyed was Protea, or maybe Lavos, but that's a couple years ago now. So, her kit is very interesting, and at first I thought was a little underwhelming, but the more I played her, the more I realized that she actually seemed very strong. I think she's pretty well suited for kind of some meta stuff, um, but also has kind of like pretty unique interactions with her abilities and playstyle and stuff. So, just gonna briefly go over her abilities. I did not use any Helminth abilities because I didn't want to. I kind of wanted to see what the frame could do just by itself. I am among the growing crowd of people who are kind of annoyed by Helminth, I guess, where it seems like a lot of frames come out and can only function with a Helminth ability. It seems like one of their abilities is just so trash that you have to replace it for the frame to work at all. So, trying to not replace abilities with Helminth and see what happens. So the first is a kind of interesting ability. So it's kind of a stealth, but it breaks when you do any kind of weapon attack. So if you attack with a primary, secondary, melee, it will break the stealth. It will briefly break when you use your abilities, but you immediately go back into stealth. But any weapon attack will permanently break it. It gives Voruna a short buff. Um, the Your melee attacks have guaranteed bleed, which is probably the biggest part of this. So the important part of this is that it synergizes a lot more with melee because it has that like guaranteed status effect on melee attacks. Um, However, I think it's useful for other cases as well. And most of this doesn't really scale with stats very much. So the crit multiplier scales with strength, the duration of the buff, the duration of the stealth scales with duration, but the buff itself, the status chance, the buff duration, the movement speed, none of that scales with anything. And that's kind of a theme throughout her kit, is that honestly, like her abilities don't really scale with like anything very much, which at first makes her seem really weak, but then you realize that it can actually make her pretty flexible. Um, so her two, which I think is the most important part of her kit, the most interesting part of her kit, is very unique ability. It's kind of similar to the Mecha set, which has been in the game for a while, which not a lot of people use. So you attack a random enemy, you put 5 status effects on them. It's important to note that this thing has. This is where a lot of like the interactions and interesting parts of her kit come from because this interacts with Archon mods. So if you proc electricity, you can proc arcane stretch off of this. That will count as electricity ability damage. Same thing with the other Archon mod effects. Don't get too excited because if you put arcane vitality, you only get 1 extra heat stack. You don't get 20 instead of 10. That would be kind of cool. Um, Now, when it says it spreads status effects, it will only spread the status effects that put on by the ability. That's where it's a little different from the mecha set. The mecha set will spread all status effects. So now a core element of her playstyle, I think, is if you put this on an enemy and they get one of those 5 random effects is slash, and you add slash damage to that, that additional slash damage you add will propagate in an area. So I think that the most important stat for her is range because of this ability. Because the base range is pretty low. Like I'm pretty sure, yeah, I have 265% range on this build, and it's the spread radius is still not even 19 meters. So but I think it's worth investing that much into this ability because it's kind of like the most unique thing about her, which I mean you wouldn't expect that from a a wolf frame, but it is what it is, and I think it is a cool interaction. It makes for some interesting builds. Her three is very simple, melee kills, you get health orbs, headshots, you get energy. This is all about energy economy, right? If you're going the melee route, you use Equilibrium. If you're not going the melee route, you use Arcane Energize and get headshots. This is how you get energy. It's very, very straightforward. I think this is a great energy economy ability. I think Voruna like pretty much you never have to worry about energy with this frame. It's, as long as you're doing the things it kind of requires you to do. So either melee or headshotting. And I'll get into that later with some of the builds where I think that this kind of encourages some synergies. And then her four, which I think is the weakest part of her kit. Um, so it's a not really it's not a exalted weapon. So it doesn't count as a weapon attack. So remember how I phrased this carefully as weapon attacks break this? This is an ability, so it doesn't break your stealth. So what you can do is run around in stealth and only attack enemies with your four, and you'll never break your stealth, which is okay. I mean, it has guaranteed slash procs. It does more damage to status effect afflicted enemies. If you kill something, you get more charges, or you get more damage on the rest of the attacks. So I think this is an interest. It's an okay ability. I do think it needs like some buffs. I think that the slash damage it does, like if you compare this to like Blade Storm, it's kind of a joke. Like this ability is kind of a joke. Um, so hopefully, if this ability gets some buffs, honestly, I think she's got one of the coolest kits that we've gotten in a long time. I don't think she's broken. I think she's a solid frame. I think you can do a lot of different things with her. I think she has a lot of potential, but I think that she is not OP, but that's fine. I think that she's just solid, which honestly, considering the state of most frames that have been released, where they're basically either super weak or are just like complete mastery fodder, or if they are strong, it's only because of one ability, and that's their helmet ability, hashtag Sevagoth. That's kind of been the state of frames since like late 2020. So I think that this is like the overall most solid frame we've gotten in a while. Um, so I can go into some build options. There's three ways that I ended up playing her. And I'll kind of go through those. So I actually started off with zero Forma and was doing Steel Path with her. So I think she does not. I kind of went overboard here. Like, I've got some Archon mods and stuff. Like, you don't really need these. These are kind of just for the memes. It's like kind of nice to get a little bit of extra energy, but it's not needed on this frame. I just had the capacity and was like, why not? So this is a no strength build, so just range. I just have all my points in range, a little bit of duration. Duration doesn't really do much for you, because like I said, it only increases the stealth duration, not the buff duration on your one. Duration does nothing on your two. It increases the duration of your three, but your three, when you get refreshes from kills, I'm pretty sure it caps out at a minute, so you can't like refresh it more than that anyways. And you basically get to that cap like instantly. So it doesn't really matter what your duration is. I mean, you're getting kills, right? Like it's a horde game. So you really don't ever have to worry about your three, no matter what your duration is. Your four, the slash proc duration will be affected by, duration will be affected by your ability duration, but like I said, this build is not focusing on her four. So if I was going to use a helmet ability, it would replace her four in this case. But like I said, I was trying to not do that. Okay, so how this build works, so in pretty much all cases, I'm going to use her two passive. So her four abilities give you different passives when you hold them. I'm not going to cover that too much, but If you hold her 2, that gives you ability or status immunity, which is absolutely insane. It's basically free prime sure-footed, and in Steel Path, a lot of the times what kills you is a heat proc or a toxin proc. Voruna doesn't care about that. So I'm just going to summon in some enemies here. And so this is a very melee focused build. So I'm just going to get some combo points. Okay. So you know, screw this thing in particular. Now I am using Naramon. Now let me see if this will work. So I did not get slash. I didn't get slash. Unfortunately, this is pretty hard. Okay, I got slash. So now these enemies close by will have slash procs. And this is the part of this kit I really hope that they adjust, because it's really inconsistent. Okay, so now finally everything. So basically the playstyle for this is well, I should have activated my 3. You activate your 3. You can use your 1 for mobility or just kind of like to get a breather. And you kind of just teleport, kill stuff, right? And everything around you will kind of just die because you're lathering up whatever you're attacking with procs, and eventually something you kill will have the right procs on it. They spread to everything, and then everything dies. So that's kind of how it works. Now the build I'm using on this is like fairly specific. So I'm using the dual carries prime. The reason I have a Riven for this weapon. I have multiple Rivens, but I'm not using a Riven. I didn't use a Riven for my testing because I want to make sure that it's not, you know, representative of what other people have available. So if you only use a Virulent Scourge on this weapon, then Toxin and Slash are almost identical, and there's the impact and puncture on this weapon are very low. So if you just use a Virulent Scourge, you can kind of go like a normal like Condition Overload, Weeping Wounds type of build. This last slot, you can kind of do whatever you want. You can go Spring-Loaded Blade. You can go Healing Return is actually insane on this frame because she's applying so many status effects. You can go a Smite mod. So that slot is kind of flexible. That's like up to you. You could go more attack speed if you want. You could go quickening. You could go more crit damage, whatever. There's plenty of mods you can go here. I think this is kind of like the core of the build. You really want, why am I doing this, right? Why do I want Toxin and Slash balanced? So, like I said, the procs will only spread if they are already applied by your 2. By Voruna's 2. So if you get slash and you add slash damage, that slash damage will propagate. So the reason I went Toxin and slash is basically just to improve my odds that whatever I attack will spread those damage over time effects. And it also helps because obviously those two, the 2 main factions you fight are Corpus and Grineer. That also covers corrupted enemies. So it also helps because, it covers your bases against those 2 enemy types. So that's that's like kind of more of a melee focused build, so I'll just bring that up again. So it's got Vitality, Equilibrium to take advantage of the health orbs, Adaptation, and some defensive arcanes for a little bit more defense. Now Brief Respite, you are constantly using abilities on this frame, so this is one of the best shield gating frames, I think, because you are constantly casting like abilities that are just expensive. So my Voruna is actually not maxed out. I've been putting form on here, but your shields when you're all said and done will be 75. So with just Brief Respite, you can get full resets from your 2 with a Decaying Dragon Key, of course. So I think that makes her an awesome shield gating frame. Very good energy economy, like I said. So that's the build I started off with. Then I moved towards, and I was like, well, maybe you can use her 4, right? So then I moved towards this build, which I don't dump my strength. I have no defensive mods on this build at all. Why? Well, once again, you are immune to status effects, and you will always be in her 4 with this build, the way that I've So what is this build good for? So same thing. When you attack with your 4 to, spread the status procs, everything. Same thing here. Attack, right? So what is this build good for? Not Steel Path. I will say that that build, it just, and this is like I said before, like her 4 just doesn't do quite enough damage right now to cut it in Steel Path. I think if this gets buffed, or if they had some kind of like scaling for status effects or something on her 4, it could be really good. Um, but what this build is good at is I actually found it was really good for like Elite Sanctuary Onslaught. Like I was getting like 1,000 kills per round, like competing with Sarens for out damaging Sarens with this build. Because the more enemies you kill, because the key is if you're at a level, if you're against enemies you can kill with her 4, it's almost like how like a wolf would actually hunt in real life, right? Like you target the weakest enemy with your 2-4 combo, and then that, because you want to get a kill with your 4, and then that increases the damage of the rest of your charges, and you end up killing the strong enemies with the status effects that get spread to them. So it's like kind of a little bit different from how you might normally play, where you target, oh, let me kill the, Eximus Bombard first. No, you kill the Butchers, you kill the Lancers, the weak enemies. They buff up your 4, you spread your status effects, blah, blah, blah. So this build can run out of energy because it doesn't really work with your 3. You're actually not, the attacks from your 4 don't proc the health orbs, and you're probably not getting headshots, so it's not going to proc the energy orbs either. So her 3 actually doesn't work very well with this build, unfortunately. That's another thing I think that would be nice if they changed, so that her 4 actually procced her 3. I think that might be a bit of an oversight, just with how it's coded up. So, similar kind of, so my pet has synth mods on it, so that's why I have Equilibrium. So Equilibrium plus Energize for that energy economy, because you use a ton of energy with this build, because not only are you spamming your 1 and 2, but you're also using your 4, which is 100 energy, so, always want to stay topped up. No defensive mods, you just have brief respite, because you're going to be in stealth all the time. Umbral Intensify and Augur Secrets to compensate for overextended. Obviously, with one more forma, I would be able to use a full, max rank Umbral Intensify, but I haven't formatted her a 5th time, but I will. I'm probably going to put a Zenuric in the Exilus slot because I really like having preparation on her. So then this is the build I kind of ended up using that I thought was the most fun. Um, so the reason that there's no arcane here is because it's flexible. So now what I was using this build for was like a status dump primary nuke build. So I don't have brief respite, but you can see I have 2 auger mods here, and I have 2 auger mods on my Xylock, right? Plus a little bit of combo duration. So this is like a stat stick Xylock kind of. And so with 160%, oops, sorry. So with 160% shield return or from energy, I get full resets. Awesome. And since she's so flexible with mod space, I was able to fit in the mecha set in addition to her too. And this is just like top tier memes. So this is just meme central, right? You've got the Archon mods, you've got the mecha set, you've got the Augur mods for shield resets, primed flow for that energy. You really want Energize because um, you are getting health orbs with this build, or sorry, energy orbs, but obviously Energize is still incredible, especially with primed flow, which I think this frame really, really needs, because at max rank I think she has 450 energy with primed flow, which is still not that much. So her base energy is very low. Okay, so a couple weapons I've used with this. So let me. So there's Arcane Momentum. So now the Paragale is awesome. Paragale almost is suffering from too much success, because if you don't kill the Paragale's passive, so the increased ammo efficiency, procs off of successive headshots. So you basically need to hit all the shots in a burst to trigger that. Problem is the Paragale does so much damage that things just die before you can actually trigger that effect. The only weakness of this weapon is the ammo economy and the long reload. So I've actually been using Fractalized Reset, and I don't have it yet. So in reality, this arcane would probably be Arcane Rise. So I think that that's going to be my strategy, is using Arcane Rise on my frame, and then Fractalized Reset on the gun. And so this works really nice with primaries that are like, can just do a ton of damage, proc some kind of status effect, and kill a target. Paragale is awesome. 100 munitions, high chance to get a huge slash proc, because this thing does a ton of damage. I don't have viral on here. This is purely just proccing slash. So tons of multi-shot, crit, shred, trying to hit multiple enemies at once. Has a ton of punch through, 2.8 punch through with this. Obviously, this is going to go in the Exilus eventually, but once again, I kind of got sick of formatting stuff. So this will go in the Exilus, and here you can put like a Bane mod, you could put Amalgam Serration, whatever you want. Ammo economy is pretty rough, so you're definitely going to want to address that somehow. So, so with this build, and this was actually, I thought this was like the most fun build that I tried. So you basically go in stealth, you teleport to an enemy, and then you get a headshot, and you kind of just like keep doing it. And you're like this like stealth sniper thing, right? And in between your attacks, you go stealth, kind of plan the next attack, right? And I haven't even found the mechanism. And you're just constantly spreading status effects like over and over again. And if you can target the mecha enemy on purpose, then it just kind of makes things even better. So the Paragale, that's more like sniper focused. So if we go to this, so the other weapon that I was having a ton of fun using, which I love how this weapon looks, and having an excuse to use it in a build was amazing. So was the Ambassador. So very long reload, but if you use the charged shot, it does like a ton of damage, and I know it doesn't have like a ton of crit, but it, you know, you get a lot of crit from galvanized scope, so it just seemed worth it from the testing I was doing. And so I put electricity and gas. Now, why would I put electricity and gas? So this was kind of a little memey, but this weapon has base electricity, right? So one thing you could do is go into the charge mode, and if you get kills with this, you're going to get even more status effects. Another option that you can go for is dropping this and running Hunter Munitions. And so this will give you gas, electricity, and potentially slash procs. The slash procs were a little unreliable, and I kind of liked having electricity be higher than gas because it's a little bit better like CC. We can kind of try this version out though. So, and similar strategy, right? So you get your 2 passive up, put your 3 buff up, go into stealth, find some enemy, and headshot them, spreads your dots. And you just kind of keep doing that. And, you know, here's the mecha enemy. Great, so you can kill that guy. And it's really nice resets, so that's kind of cool. And you'll just spread dots all over. It's almost like you're playing Saren or something. But, like, more fun, I think. So, yeah, it's a really weird playstyle, but I thought it was like, that was the most fun I had with this frame. Obviously, I'm not using her 4. I can go pull that build up again. So, running rolling guard, because you do pop out of stealth. You basically go into stealth, identify a target to them, hit them in the head. You know, then you can roll and guard if you need to. But honestly, you don't really need this because you don't have any status effects. The only reason I put this in here was I did do a steel path run on Ani, in the void, and there are some toxin clouds where yes, you can't get the toxin status effect, but you can get the toxin proc or the toxin damage, which can kill you. So that was still kind of nice to have. I'm using MedJ Predicite, so I have this on here just in, because why not? So you can pick up health orbs because you're going to be at full health all the time. But pretty simple stuff outside of that. So some of their defensive mods and Prime Pack Leader, Prime Animal Instinct, blah blah blah. So the mecha mods are like the most important one here. So yeah, and then for this, I guess one thing to note. So obviously, if you're doing the more melee focus setup, Naramon is really good. Um, so I didn't address the focus schools, so I can do that right now. So my bad on that one. So if you're doing the melee setup, Naramon is really good. For this one, I actually like Zenuric because sometimes when you chew, it will stagger them, and it can kind of be hard to get headshots. So it's kind of nice to use Zenuric slow. So yeah, but man, this build is just so funny doing Steel Path with this. Like, you run around in stealth. She's actually really fast in stealth. You chew something, you pop out, hit him in the head. So for focus schools for the other builds, so for the 2 build, or for the more melee focus build, definitely Naramon. That's kind of a no-brainer. And then the 4 build, what you can do is run Unairu, which kind of makes it much easier to get kills with her 4, so I can show that really quick. So sorry for forgetting the focus school. There's so many things that go into a Warframe build these days. Let me do this. So, obviously you can strip armor, and which makes it a little easier to kill stuff with her So, because otherwise you're not really gonna kill Steel Path enemies without doing that. But it can do all right. It's not, it's the weakest of your build options, I think. I think using either a ranged weapon or a melee weapon that synergizes with her 2 is a little better than her 4. But I think if they buff her 4, it doesn't need much. I think it just needs to like scale like extra damage per status effect or something. I don't know, something that lets it scale more, and I think it could be super strong. As far as Archon shards go, so I don't have any Archon shards in her right now. My recommendations would, I think the number one thing is probably like more energy, because man, this frame is like, holy smokes, it is got really low energy. It's not too much of a problem, but that might be a nice thing to have. If you get energy on spawn, you can replace preparation. She doesn't really need strength or duration, which are the 2, some of the more popular Archon shard choices. So you can kind of just go whatever you want, honestly, with the Archon shards. It's pretty open-ended. So yeah, that's what I've been using on Voruna. I think she is extremely fun and really strong. And man, the ambassador looks so cool. So it was awesome. Having a frame that actually could make use of like some more like niche meme type weapons was really awesome. Some things she doesn't work well with are like anything where you need to get a lot of attacks off doesn't really work well with her 1, because that's why I think her 1. So I was using like the Comorex, the Sporothrix, the Paragal, the stuff with like charge shots or shotguns. Like those all work really well. Because you go into stealth, you find an enemy, pop out, shoot them, go back into stealth. Another thing that's really awesome is you can go into her stealth while reloading, and it doesn't interrupt the animation. So that's why Fractalized Reset is really nice, because you can kind of reset while you're in stealth. As you're stealthed and finding a new target, your status effects are killing everything. So yeah, I think she is very cool. Things like pistols that fire a lot, or something like a new core where you want to like fire for a while on the same target, don't really work as well. And that's why for like the more melee focused build, I went like health tank type mods, because you're not really going to be in stealth all the time. with how her one works. Um, Whereas with like, or if you do that, you can use something like a pennant or a Karis Prime, or something that does like a burst of status damage, and then you can go back into stealth. So, but you can kind of decide whether you like the melee or ranged weapon or her ult. So I think that this frame has a ton of options. I played her a ton in Steel Path. I did like some ESO focus farming, Zeramon bounties. Like she seems super solid. So I've been really happy. Hopefully you enjoy playing her. I think she has a ton of potential. Hopefully there's some tweaks to her 4. Maybe something to make her 2 a little more consistent. But yeah, that's really my only objections to her. So very happy with how she turned out. Plus, I think she looks amazing. I think they knocked it out of the park with how she looks. So if you enjoy playing Voruna, let me know. I hope you have a good day. See you around.